In this video, we're going to go through a few optional tweaks you can make to your WordPress installation to make it just a little bit more secure. So, here's the first one. If I know that this is a WordPress site, I can try and look at the configuration file just by trying to load it right in the browser. So I might guess that it's just at WordPress install /wp-config.php. Try and load that, and apparently nothing happens. I get a blank window, so obviously I can't see its contents, but I do know that that's where this file resides. Now let's take a look at the FTP site. So indeed, in this version of this WordPress install, I do have a wp-config file here. Of course, the better place for this to be would be one directory level up, where it would never be seen by the web server. But if that's not an option for you for whatever reason, you do have an additional way to protect it. As it is right now, although the page is blank, if the web server were to stay up but something happened with the PHP process, that is the programming language that actually runs WordPress, those things could theoretically go down independently. If that were to happen, you could end up with the entire contents of your wp-config file, your database password and so forth, displayed in the browser. That wouldn't be so good. So, what you can do is add a little bit of extra protection to this file. Here's how you do that. We'll go back to FTP, and I have an Htaccess file here. If you've done a full WordPress installation and set up your permalinks, this will already be here. Otherwise, you can just create one using the mechanism in your FTP client. In my case, I can right-click and choose New File if I needed to. I'm going to edit this file live on the server using a command built into my FTP application. I can just edit with BBEdit here. The reason I'm doing this is that this file starts with a dot, and depending on your computing system, that file could be rendered as invisible if you just drag it onto your desktop and open it there. So I'm going to edit it this way, which will instantly save my changes up to the server for me. So I'm going to edit. I already have it open, so let's switch to that. And here we are. Here's the Htaccess file. Up here is all the WordPress stuff, marked with this comment, a comment being a descriptive string that is ignored by the processor of the file, in this case the web server. So it says begin WordPress and end WordPress. That's the part that WordPress knows it can edit if it has access to this file. It ignores everything else. So we can ignore that for now and scroll down to here. So I've added a comment that says don't allow the wp-config file to be loaded. And then I have these 4 lines commented out. So I'm going to delete these comments so that these lines will actually take effect. And I'm going to save this. In doing that, the file is instantly uploaded. If you're editing this by dragging it to your desktop first, you'll need to drag it back up. Having done that, you can switch back to your web browser. And now watch what happens if I reload this. Forbidden. So now, the web server won't even try to return this file, which is a little bit better. It's still better to make sure that it's not even in that directory, so it's just completely inaccessible to the web server. But this is a little bit better than allowing it to load blank. So that's one option. Some other things we have in here. Prevent directory browsing. I'll show you what this means. Here's an example of a website that has Apache's default directory indexing turned on. This is something that you probably won't see. It's a small security risk to allow people to see the contents of a directory. So most web hosting companies have turned this sort of thing off. But if yours is on and you'd like to turn it off, in your Htaccess file, you can add this line with no comment in front of it. Options, space, minus indexes. And having done that, if you try to browse a directory like this, I've just created this one that has nothing in it. You can see it gives me a not found, which is to say there is no index file, and so it's not going to give me anything. That way, the general contents of this directory cannot be viewed by any random web user. Let's switch back to the Htaccess file and see what else we have. One more here. This is a little tweak I found that will return errors if someone tries to inject JavaScript tags or things that will try to get into PHP and mess with your page. So PHP has a couple of built-in variables called globals and another one called request that, if certain settings are turned on, can inject variables and modify the code of WordPress. Most web hosting companies are not going to allow that sort of thing, but this is a pretty harmless way to ensure that someone can't try and do this. So I have this turned off right now. This isn't really going to do anything, but I'll show you the form that these URLs could take. So when I load up a query string, _request foo equals bar. I'm trying to modify a PHP variable called foo and set it to bar. Nothing happens. But someone could be trying this, and if they guess the right thing, something funky could happen. And I don't mean that in a good way. So if I enable these rules by first uncommenting them, and then save the file, now I try and reload this, and I get a forbidden error. I won't go into the particulars of exactly how this works. Suffice it to say, it checks the query string, which is everything that appears after this question mark. And if it meets certain conditions, it will return a forbidden error, which is what this capital F means in this rule. You can look up the documentation on Apache's mod rewrite module if you're curious to dig into exactly what this stuff does. But basically, it's just a harder way to say, yeah, you can't do that. So that's a look at a few security tweaks you can make to make your WordPress site a little more secure.